I've got a fair bit to say about this and about the climate, not just at Disney, but of entities like Disney in general. But I'm going to focus the conversation on Disney. Just realize a lot of what I'm going to say applies elsewhere. But before we get too far into that, let's talk about today's sponsor, me, effectively. A couple years ago, I wrote a fantasy novel called Dreams of Fire. And some years now, working on getting the audiobook out. It is finally...
Really tempted to take a look at this, but actually read it, I can't. Oh, there, she, they. I was wondering about this person's pronouns. I knew this person back when I actually watched this channel as a guy.
So... the show Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. This is a Disney Channel show that I haven't seen. I remember seeing the trailers for it when it came out, and it looked fun and energetic, but it also looked very much not for me. Not to say that I didn't think there would be a way for me to get some enjoyment out of it, but I have limited hours in my day, and it didn't look like something that I was going to enjoy enough.
A few minutes later.
Reviews were very good. The audience that it was aimed at seemed to be finding it and really enjoying it. It is a show, if you don't know the premise, about a awkward, very nerdy...
This person is basically saying they didn't watch this, but somehow when it comes out that this is the pro-trans cartoon that they really need right now, and it got cut, that all of a sudden it's a problem because Disney took measures to sanitize this particular cartoon. I can't help but laugh at that. Not getting on board until you find out something was cut. The absurdity of that and making a video on that is a little bit funny.
So that is the status of the show. It was very critically acclaimed. It seemed to be doing well, but for reasons that I could not fully track down, Disney made the decision not to renew it further than the 2 seasons that we were getting. That is frustrating, certainly for fans of the thing, but that is also not extremely uncommon. But the thing that we found out last week is that there is a specific episode called The Gatekeeper, which has not aired, was intended to have aired in that first block, and we know that for a fact, and I'll explain how we know that for certain in a little bit.
A few moments later.
Is currently being held and may well not even be aired when the final chunk of episodes go live. And it is an episode dealing incredibly directly with not only a trans character, but a specific trans issue, that being trans kids in sports. It's not allegorical, it tackles that issue head on. Now, Polygon first broke this story a couple of days ago, and since that happened, a few additional things kind of cascaded out of that. The episode actually leaked. It was put online in its entirety on YouTube, taken down relatively quickly. But, some folks were able to get to see what it is, myself included. Now, I will talk in more detail about the episode a little bit later. I will not be using any clips or audio from it, just because that kind of thing is already a little bit dicey on YouTube. Copyright claims have gotten way more aggressive lately. And when it's something that technically is not even supposed to be viewable to the public, I don't really want to poke the bear too hard on that. That said, I am going to test my luck slightly and make use of some stills.
The irony of this is laughable. Disney cut it because they thought it would give them bad press or flag. But they is being so brave and bold to use stills. I'm going to have to watch this episode because trans kids in sports is a very contentious topic. So I'm curious how they handled it and probably why it got cut.
Because while putting up the video, probably not in my interest, stills are out there. People captured screenshots and stuff. So I'll take the risk and get to that. But this is dealing very specifically with a trans issue, not just a trans character, because the trans character in question, a character named Brooklyn, has been around since season 1. So this wasn't like a very special episode where a character was introduced just for the purpose of talking about this issue. This character has been around, voiced by trans actress India Moore. I would call her a recurring character. She hasn't appeared in a ton of episodes and only really got a heavy highlight in one episode in the first season where she invited Lunella to a slumber party at her house, and the standard kind of teen tween awkwardness that kind of happens when a nerd doesn't know how to deal with a social situation ensues. This was an episode focused very specifically on her as a character and on the fact that she is trans. Now, when the word broke that this was not going to air, there were initially some people, including artists who worked on it, who made claims and or assumptions that the reason it wasn't going to air was because of the recent results of the election. That isn't true. We'll get into as close to an official reason as we're probably ever going to hear, or at least anytime soon, as to why it wasn't going to go to air. But at the very least, it can't be because of the election. The timeline doesn't work. In that episode, because of stuff that just happens in relation to the Beyonder, he has not appeared since. And there have been 8 more episodes since then, and the Beyonder appears in none of them. So that whole thing that he used to do of describing the villains and their schemes or whatnot, that stopped happening after that point. But this episode that is being held, he does that. He shows up and does that shtick, which means it must have been intended to air prior to Wishtar, which means it should have aired probably at some point in February of this year and didn't.
Okay. Where it was supposed to air is really relevant here. I mean, it sounded like a stupid gimmick. Maybe they made it work. I haven't watched this show either, but I'm less likely, since it's Disney and Marvel, to give a crap about this. For the record, it was recommended to me that I watch this episode.
The official, I'm going to put that in quotes, the inside source that Polygon has at Disney. And I know some people are inherently skeptical of unnamed inside sources, but you need to realize that is a huge part of how we learn about anything that goes on in this business. And you would just have to make the call as to whether or not you trust.
And a lot of people are skeptical of Polygon. So double untrustworthiness for a lot of people out there.
The outlet that is printing this as to whether or not they have properly vetted their sources. If you believe that they have, then you just have to deal with the fact that they're unnamed. But their unnamed inside source said that the decision to hold the episode actually happened last year, which, given how early in the year the rest of that block aired, tracks. And I am inclined to believe that that is true. What I'm a little bit more skeptical about are the reasons.
Yeah, because trans kids in media is a big enough of a hot topic. Trans kids in sport, you're just compounding the sort of mental hijinks you'll have to deal with in the backlash.
So the claim basically translates to, this is a hot button issue. This is a very specifically political issue. And it is, let's be clear. This is not just a moral issue. This is a political one. There are politicians on both sides who have been running as part of their platform. We are going to keep trans kids out of sports, either completely, or at least we will not allow them to participate in the sports of the gender that they are.
Is they gonna just brush completely over the fact that just kids, what you define as kids, transitioning is a hot topic to start with? Maybe they covered that in a previous video, but you could see a bit of the skepticism technically true.
They identify as, and will force them to compete in the section of sports that matches the gender they were assigned at birth, if not just flat out banning their participation. It is very much a political issue. And in the abstract, a studio like Disney making a decision to hold, and I will say, I'll continue to use the word that they did, because it is technically not pulled, and it is possible it could air with the last block of season 2. I'd be surprised, but we'll circle back to that. The idea of a show like this on a network like this tackling a hot button active political issue like that, one that is divisive on all sides of the aisle, well, yeah, I could see why they'd get cold feet about.
And also in a television show aimed at children, you just compounding it even more. Now, I'm skeptical to call things propaganda, but just having a trans child will be a little bit sketchy from at least those who are trans critical, at least when it comes to transing kids. As personally, I think they should. Age of consent and all that stuff. Do you think what pageant parents taking their little children to these sort of beauty pageants with some very sketchy stuff going on, would you have a problem with that? I'm not going to talk to they there, because I doubt they'll watch this video. Best not even tag them in this one. I'll link it, but
about that, and feel that it is the issue that is at the core of the story that they want to avoid, not the character that they are trying to close off or silence or whatever else. And this entire notion of the episode storyline being the issue would fall in line with Bob Iger's statements about how Disney has been focusing too much on the message. So this whole thing about the issue being the storyline and not the character may be technically true. Spiritually, it is not, and here's why. Brooklyn hasn't been confirmed as trans prior to this episode. Brooklyn's appeared in numerous episodes, is voiced by a trans actress, so anyone who is aware of that probably can put 2 and 2 together that the character is likely also intended to, but it was never confirmed prior to this. This is the episode where that is made explicit, initially through visual signifiers such as a trans supportive sticker on her water bottle, her pride knee pads, etc. But it gets said flat out here for the first time in the episode that is not being aired. I don't want to say failure, but I don't want to say that the lack of confirming Brooklyn as trans prior to this episode was like some kind of nefarious thing to like, oh, be sure to put it in something we could cut later. Like we can probably easily speculate about things like the single line of dialogue in the first season.
Okay, they's playing their bases. Doesn't sound like she wants to be too hard, but also at the same time wants to be hard on Disney. Yeah, rather cowardly. This wishy-washy sort of back and forth could be seen as cowardly or just making sure she's reporting on it accurately.
Season of Loki that confirms him as bi, or the background kiss in Rise of Skywalker, etc. Things that are easily just cut out. I don't think that's what happened with the confirmation of Brooklyn being trans. I think it really was a matter of they didn't bring it up until it actually impacted the story, which in many ways you could argue.
Shide brings up a very good point. Easily cut for the Chinese release, because you think America is homophobic against all this crap? China is even worse.
You is good representation because, well, as far as anyone should be concerned, she's just a girl. The fact that she's trans doesn't impact her friends' feelings about her, and it hasn't been dealing with bigotry towards her prior to this episode.
A few minutes later.
Doesn't really matter because the end result is still you are removing the episode that confirmed she was trans. You have erased her transness. Whether that was your intent or not,
Erase the transness, okay, in a piece of media. She sounds rather offended about that, but Shide probably thinks kids, before they even hit puberty, should be able to consent or decide for themselves because they're so smart if they really are trans, okay? Agree with the theory of social contagion or not, that they're trying to push autistic people because they feel weird that, oh, you're the wrong sex before they even hit puberty. Personally, I think that's a bit bullshit. I don't buy into the whole grooming the children, even though, yeah, leftists play into that stupidly. Hell, even some dumbass liberals play into that. Tolerance is absolutely fine, but when you elevate a certain minority who literally has to have surgery, take drugs for the rest of their lives to live as they want, I think there should be a bit of skepticism towards that. And any company who would push that haphazardly is just moronic. And people who push that Disney should have put this out for a show that they didn't watch and admit had decent success seems borderline insane to me. But maybe Shide will have a little bit more here.
Doesn't really matter. It's still the end result. Now, it is possible that her transness might be brought up in some of the other episodes that haven't aired. That is certainly a possibility. I can't discount it. I also would not be surprised if it isn't, because if after the episode, The Gatekeeper, at least if it had aired when it was meant to be, if after that they just felt the need to not bring it up again because these are people who aren't going to make a deal with it. We dealt with the person who was making a deal of it, and she was the villain of that episode. So we're not going to keep harping on this. I think that would have been perfectly valid as well. So it may or may not get confirmed in ways in the episodes that do actually end up seeing air. But as of right now, it is the confirmation episode, and you're not letting people see it. So the result is a silencing and a hiding of her identity as a trans person. Again, probably not what they meant to do, because if they objected to the character as a whole, they would have had the character removed long before this. But they didn't. So yes, to a certain...
So you know what? Pushing the they, them pronouns, not enough for this person here. Someone who isn't even part of the audience here. Am I the only one seeing the stupid brain rot involved within this? The only reason I get into this political stuff is so I have an education to actually see how stupid people who are pushing it in the media sort of push it from either side. And this is brain rot, okay? Pure and simple. Totally within an echo chamber, I think. Not that every echo chamber is the same size. Some are much bigger than others.
To an extent, our issue is with the storyline, not the character. Okay, I do believe that, but given that transness is at the heart of this story, and this is the episode that confirms it, you are getting rid of the trans confirmation for this character. You just are. You can call it collateral damage, but that does not negate the fact of what is happening. So why don't we actually talk about this episode? And I think it's worth noting at this point, I've already said this is a show that is aimed at an age group and honestly probably a ethnic demographic that just isn't me. From what I can tell, from what I have seen, it leads very heavily into POC of various kinds. We have Asian characters, we have Hispanic characters. There is a very healthy mix. And it's also a kind of a very urban setting. Most of these things fall outside of me as the intended audience. So before I talk about the episode, bear that in mind.
I find it funny that Shide brings up the POC aspect, the races, but not the ages. What is the age demographic this show is aimed at? You've done the research, okay? Why omit that certain amount?
First of all, and also keep in mind, me agreeing with something's political point does not automatically mean I'm going to like it. I've seen plenty of stuff that I think has good politics, but ultimately still isn't very good. So all that being said, how was this episode even?
Shide admits that political stuff can make things bad or doesn't necessarily affect it. Okay, fair enough there. Gotta give people some points here and there. I just find it sort of stupid. She brings that up without actually elaborating on it.
How big of a loss was this? It's an immense loss because this episode is absolutely beautiful. Now, as I go into this description, this is going to be full and spoiler filled. So if you want a chance to try and find this episode to see if it's shown up anywhere else, well, I would advise you go ahead and do that. I don't know how. I am not advocating for anything, but I'm saying if you are inclined to try and find out more about this episode rather than hearing it from me and my thoughts on it, you should probably go do that and then circle on back. Because, yeah, I'm going to talk about.
And I'll do that just now, because I do know where to find it. At least someone linked it to me. I'm back from watching it, and I'm getting ready to get back into this video right here. Let's just say I had some thoughts on this that I'll lay out as the she-they does.
Pretty open. So Brooklyn is the captain of the volleyball team. And as the episode opens, the team is gearing up to face off against a rival volleyball team. And the coach of that other team is Coach Greer. And Greer, upon discovering that Brooklyn is trans, loses her goddamned mind.
Yeah, I think that's a bigger problem for this episode than any trans stuff. A sort of deep reading into that will read this character as a conservative character. And this is going to piss off a lot of conservatives and anyone who sort of is against trans children in sports, and doubly piss off people who are against kids transitioning at all.
She looks for any reason she possibly can to bar Brooklyn in specific from competing, or the team as a whole from competing. And when she is unsuccessful,
she also looks like a Karen. Let's see what he leaves out. Oh, sorry, misgendered. She, they. Sorry, people are just gonna inherently think something when they see certain people or hear certain people.
Successful in doing that, she uses a high-tech key bought from a villain's yard sale, and she uses that to lock the entire team, not strictly speaking in the locker room. What it actually does is transport them to basically a high-tech virtual reality escape room. The intention being to keep the team from being able to take.
Okay, I like that concept. I like how they play it off. No problems with this idea. There's a lot of other things wrong with it, and a lot of it comes down to this wasn't made for me. But let's say I hypothetically had children. If my child was interested in watching this episode, I might have some concerns. Would I stop them from doing this? No. I probably actually would be curious if they would buy into this crap. Okay, if they thought it's cool to be trans from this. But another funny thing about this is this trans character, biologically male, trans female, she is shown to be way more capable physically than any of her teammates. So in a certain way, it plays into the fact that trans women, or girls in this case, have a biological advantage in sports. The irony of this is sort of funny when you look at it subtextually. The irony of this when you look at it from a cultural perspective, I don't think they were trying to do that, but that's how it will come off to a lot of people. Validating that keeping girls out of sports is the correct decision because she clearly has a biological advantage over all of her teammates. There could be an in-story reason for that. She could be older, blah, blah, blah. But just the irony of that has to make me laugh some.
Take the court when the thing starts, because if that whistle blows to start and they're not there, the whole thing's forfeit. So while their friends on the outside try and stall for time, the team has to work together to try and open this door. There are 18 keys. And we do get a montage kind of speed running. They're getting all these keys, unlocking the door, going through, and they're right back where they started. It doesn't get them out. And that is where the episode really, truly hits its stride, because Brooklyn has a fairly justifiable breakdown of both frustration and guilt, because she is being made to feel by this adult who is trying to bar her from a thing she loves. She is being made to feel like the problem is her, because as far as Greer is concerned, it is. That was implanted when a hologram of Greer laid out the whole premise. Follow my rules.
Yeah, the whole rules thing from a cultural or subtextual level has some pretty damning implications if you are applying this to those against trans girls in sports. Like they're trying to, any laws or rules to actually bar them are unfair. They call them rules to be fair, but they're not. But they're ignoring the other side's perspective here. Completely and utterly. Again, there's various echo chambers. Not all leftists are this fucking ignorant to the world to not even acknowledge those concerns might have some validity. But this is a she, they, and I'm gonna try to use the proper pronouns because I try to be respectful in my own particular way.
To get out. But Brooklyn's very existence breaks Greer's rules. This is actually really brilliant because it emphasizes the fact that it doesn't matter how many hoops they jump through, how many locks they open. Greer was never going to let them win. All of these obstacles, all of the locks, all of the escape room tactics, it was to keep them busy. But even if they succeed, they are still prevented because the point was never to actually give them a bar to clear to allow them to participate as a group or Brooklyn to participate as an individual. Because the premise is, no, you don't get to win. Then everything.
Yeah, I wonder how she, they is gonna sort of analyze the sort of escape scene and how much it even got me close to thinking the left is, or the leftists of this persuasion is trying to co-op gaming or break it down. Because why I'm not going to be offended by it personally. I like to think about the sort of how these sort of subtextual messages, or should I say, I like to think about how these subtextual messages can be applied outside of the world at large. And given the Gamergate 2 stuff I'm going with, yeah, I can see this as a big fucking red flag of them trying to inject some high tier social commentary into this children's program. Not going to call it subliminal messaging, but it's definitely propagandic in certain regards. Hence why it was probably pulled. Maybe Disney isn't completely brain dead.
Else is the appearance of fairness. If you do this, and this, unlock all 18 of these keys, yeah, sure. But then when they do, no, still not allowed, because that was never the point. The starting premise from Greer's perspective is you don't get to be here. And there's literally nothing that Brooklyn can do to change that.
Yeah, you're taking something that the show actually highlights within it, and you ignore that. You just don't care about reality, okay? Maybe this is why you're setting this in some sort of fantasy, pseudo fantasy land. It works in this magical fantasy land. I agree. In reality, yeah, the one to one, maybe there's argument that this is just a magical land where trans people have a perfect transition, and that's great. Okay, this girl is fantasy, so it doesn't matter that she had such a perfect transition. And that's the only way I can find from a subtextual level to actually make this work.
That because the reason Greer believes that she shouldn't be there is fundamental to who she is, which is why she feels guilty.
Emotional please, even in a piece of media that they said they didn't even care about. This is why I don't give a damn about emotional arguments anymore. They're really meant to just lead you away from the rational. Why there is a certain amount of room for subjective reading of art and appreciating it on one level, you have to look at the reality of how it will come across and how bigoted it'll come across to those who have concern. But this person, this she, they, probably doesn't care about the concerns of parents or even care about the fact that a lot of children can be led astray, both by institutions and their parents. This is why consent's there. I think 18's a good age to leave it off. Maybe there's argument you can start getting a training period at like 16 to start learning to be an adult, but that's a different story altogether.
And it's why she's frustrated. And it's why she breaks down asking the question, how many doors do I have to break through before people will just let me live? And if that already sounds pretty good in terms of representation, it gets better because
then you're just looking at it as an activist. I wonder if they would criticize conservative propaganda. She would probably call it propaganda when it would be more traditional. I wonder if she would criticize those aspects. I don't know. And I'm not even going to bother to watch, okay? But when the shoe's on the other foot, think about how the other side will see it.
The kids realize, okay, the system is rigged against us. It is designed so that we cannot win. And we've been playing by the system's rules, and we shouldn't. The system is rigged, and playing fair won't get them forward because it's not designed to be fair. So don't play by the rules at all. And to be clear, this is not subtext. It is stated outright, clearly, and in effectively the same words I just used. The team escapes by literally breaking the system, destroying the system that is holding them in place, rather than play by the...
Yeah, and look at how angry they are about it. Yeah, I'll say it straight up. This looks like goddamn propaganda. This is a clear-cut case of something propagandic. Maybe the series is littered with this. I don't know. Not gonna watch. Good on Disney for pulling this fucking episode because they would have a shit fit deservedly for this sort of messaging aimed towards children. The ironic part is when Disney is with them, you know, the LGBTQ plus movement, they go rah, rah, rah. The moment they pull out, it's Disney did something wrong. I don't know if the she-they is going to do it to that point. The lack of understanding of why this is getting pulled is why so many people on the left are fucking idiots. They don't understand the principles of tolerance. You got to give some to get some. This comes across as they want it all. But maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh with this.
The unfair and rigged rules that system has laid out for them. They destroy this escape room, have a boss fight with a virtual representation of Greer, making use of this.
They are literally breaking down various representations of the game world. Then they replace one of the most iconic items in Legend of Zelda. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this with a group of females. I don't care their POC, but some people will. Something more traditionally masculine, a masculine style game and co-op it. Yeah, I'm probably going nice on this.
Use of this glorious image, this volleyball in trans colors. And after finally breaking the system down, they are able to get to the court, partially because the last minute stall was facilitated.
Yeah, this sort of media lends credence to the people they want to replace us and that they're trying to groom our kids. Optics matter, okay? Advocating for this episode shouldn't be banned just because it would have been great representation at the cost of, you know, anyone who disagrees with them. But does they care about that? Probably not, because they want to break the system. Again, used to watch this person back when Doctor Who was much more to my taste. I tried to give New Who a chance after Jodie Whittaker left, okay? Tried. But aside from the cringy stuff, which I could overlook, the writing wasn't there. It just wasn't. It broke the rules. Timeless Child, I think that's the name of the episode where they actively go against the canon. You have to rewrite history. I'm not even talking about the literal pre-dawn time for the Doctor. That can actually be explained away. The fact that the Black Doctor in that has the TARDIS as it looks, when canonically the TARDIS didn't get stuck in that shape, is more of a fuck you to traditional fans. The other stuff is just icing on the cake. I don't think many people realize Doctor found the TARDIS. It had no shape. It went into shape-changing mode, okay? It got stuck in its iconic form. Now, there's two things to sort of explain that away. Either the writers forgot about that, or they didn't care, and they wanted to give it to this crazy reinvention of the Doctor. But let me not digress too much on that.
By Greer's own daughter, who didn't know what Greer was doing. She just wanted to play volleyball. She didn't care. Only her mother did. Even as her mother screams and shouts that it's about fairness and for the sake.
Why does she have to have a place on the girls' team where she became the captain, the most capable member? Maybe another girl could have actually taken up. Now, this is all hypothetical. This is the argument against trans women in sports. They have a biological event. And this episode plays right into that stereotype, that beliefs by the conservatives. So funny stuff how this they completely misses it because they're just so enthralled with how good of representation and not how good the media or what sort of effects it will have on, well, maybe on society. That's fucking effects on the fucking actual children watching it. Frankly,
of her daughter. Her daughter didn't ask her to do that. And beautifully, as the perfect cap on all of this, the episode ends with the start of the match. And we don't know who wins because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because kids don't care about that shit, as they shouldn't. And also sort of making, I didn't even think about it until I watched this. The sort of taking the mother out of that child's life. Another thing that will be seen as a fucking insult in the cultural space we live. Is she going to get into the cultural space? Because me and her don't fundamentally agree. I think I read a little bit better into it than this they. But clearly she has tunnel vision and is just so overjoyed. Look at that face. So happy. I wonder, I don't want to be cynical. I have to wonder if some of these people do this sort of stuff just to sort of virtue signal like this to get a certain audience on their side, or if they genuinely believe these thoughts. I'm mixed on that. I'm a cynical person, so that's why I bring that up.
All that was desired, all Brooklyn and her friends wanted was the chance to play. They weren't asking to win, even if you yourself are not trans or don't know someone who is, so far as you're aware. There is so much love and compassion in this episode, dealing
Maybe. But there's also hatred for a certain sect of the population. A certain sect of the population, love it or hate it, sort of one. This is why I can't side with either side. People this unself-aware. Maybe they will get into that. This is just irritated me. The sort of playing up the emotion, playing up an episode of a cartoon she was not even interested in.
very legitimately with Brooklyn's fears and her frustration and her guilt and how badly she needs her friends, but how hard it is for her to ask for that help because she feels like it makes her a burden.
Stop with the emotional manipulation. It's starting to actually piss me off. Really is. You're really pushing that emotional card for one particular group, a very small group. And why I will acknowledge there is biological differences between male and females. There is also a middle ground. It's called middle sex. Biological dysfunctions within human beings that chromosomally will make them neither male nor female. And you have to believe that even if they don't have the chromosomal damage, there is probably a small amount of mutations within the brain that will probably have a biological male react more as a female. And the reverse be true. But the overwhelming messaging in the media, just a blatant, oh, love is love crap. Get that shit out of it. The love is love crap ignores reality. Life is tough. Yeah, the love is love crap. The love is love crap ignores typically a lot of people, a lot of stupid people, a lot of susceptible people like autistic people and others who are easy to influence. I'm not saying that's everyone. I'm just saying when it comes to trans in the kids, that is a legitimate concern that a lot on the left, especially leftists, just like stop push aside. To be clear, not all people on the left ignore that issue, and they have their sector of the gatekeeping. Also comes into play, but let me not harp too much on this.
Officially, as I said, being held, not fully canceled or pulled or whatever.
Was that a secret middle finger by the she-they?
Is possible. It could still air in the second block of season 2. It's officially, as I said, being held, not
Maybe that's like a secret sign, like, yeah, middle finger.
fully canceled or pulled or whatever.
Sorry, I'm reading too deep into this. Got to make it for the record. I just thought that was funny if it was. If not, my bad.
But even if it does, this whole thing is incredibly frustrating and incredibly suspect because this isn't something that the creators of the show could have just snuck in. You need to understand, as noted by a Disney animator who didn't work on this show specifically, but has worked on other shows there and backed up by the creator of the Disney show Amphibia, this had to go through multiple layers of approval before it could get into the state that it clearly existed. Because it's a finished episode. Everything's done. The voices, the music, the sound effects, the animation, everything is finished. So that means it had to go through a pitch, a script, a storyboard, and animation, and then all the other steps that go along with that, voice recording, everything else. And at every step of that, it cleared approval. People signed off saying this is okay, and let it get so far down the road that it is a finished piece of media that is now basically gone. That is insanely disrespectful, not only to the trans community who
disrespectful, not even considering the other subtextual meaning. Okay, I'm not really angry about this, okay? I'm just more irritated about the one-sided nature of people like this, only considering the feelings of a certain group. And maybe there's too much baggage because a lot of people like this, maybe not this they have certain gatekeeping mechanisms, like thinking someone like a transgender porn activist, Buck Angel, is pragmatic because, yeah, maybe let me not bring this in. This is too much knowledge is sometimes a burden and definitely not worth putting in this video. But the point being is when you only think that one group is being held down, being oppressed, everyone else is chastised. This sort of narrative, no matter whose narrative it is, the oppressive versus the oppressor narrative, legitimately just tunnel visions gives everyone of any identity group who goes this far over the edge a zeal that makes them have tunnel vision of some insane degree. Now, there is a matter of nuance. There's a matter of actually considering different sides if you really want to go down this road. But into the but at the end of the day, this is just a kamikaze dive that I hope is going to go away. It's not. This sort of attitude on the left will just perpetuate the same sort of identity based reaction on the right. A cycle that feeds into each other. But maybe I'm being too hard. I had to search hard for a video this freaking tunnel vision. I had to look around a bit to find a video this out there on the left comparison to some of my other content.
This was going to be a massive, wonderful, loving boost for, but also massively disrespectful to anyone who worked on this. You let them pour so much work into this that you're just going to throw away. We have been getting on Warner Brother Discovery's ass about this with some of the movies that they have canned before they've even been released. This is effectively the same thing. Granted, not for the same motivation. This isn't.
Well, you're right there on the right. The same people who are offended, you're right there with you. They're right there with you. They hate Disney for their virtue signaling. I don't hate Disney. I just think they've a corporation. I can go other places for media. I can go other places for media. Hell, most people should. But if you want to talk about rights and disrespect, yeah, you don't know the fucking details. They could have pushed this idea, threatened lawsuits and other issues with this. I'm not saying they did. There's just a sort of cultural push that probably went into the works, and maybe smarter people looked at this and realized, yeah, this is really going to lay badly to our more conservative, the families that tend to have more children, even from audience, even from the audience, what the audience wants. But the Shide wants to go on about the creatives, okay? It's the creatives being disrespected here. Maybe, but they're being paid and comprehend, but they're being paid for their work. What about the audience? Maybe they'll get into the audience and not just the trans audience, the extremist mind view, okay? For the creatives. I think the creatives not being paid is a bigger problem. Underpaid. The VFX departments basically being blackballed. The VFX, like trying to unionize at Disney, being pushed so hard to put out products which tend to be criticized, like She Hulk. I do remember that. Over reliance on that. The writer's strikes, which probably the Shide would agree with. But is she going to bring any of that up? Maybe she shouldn't, okay? I think that's a more legitimate concern, even from a more left leaning perspective, from a creator perspective, than them getting paid for this and it just not being used. And it's not like it's not online. You think this episode should be spread? Why didn't you share the link? Because you're afraid. You're afraid that it's going to hurt your channel. You're just as big as you think Disney is. You're just as disrespectful to these creators as Disney is. They got paid for it. I would hope so, at least.
Freeboard, so many steps, but you let people put their time, their effort, their work into it, and then you canned it. That is massively disrespectful, regardless of what you think about the politics of this episode, just on a professional level.
On a professional level, they got paid for it. It's a team. And Disney's anti-art. You only see it when it's your art. Do you acknowledge the other people who have criticism against Disney just going with the member barrier approach, them reusing aspects? No, you like that. You like that they replaced the sword from Link, that classic iconic scene, that they changed it into a trans representation with a volleyball and completely broke the system. Gamers would be more offended that they sort of gave more traditionally. There was a little bit of Mario. There was a little bit of Link. I should go back to see all the stills, but no, not going to waste my time. That's disrespectful to gaming for them to co-opt their political message for. Professionals have to do a lot of things they don't like. Mark Hamill didn't like what Ryan Johnson did to Luke. He came to terms with it, accepted it. Who knows why? Maybe someone pursued him. Maybe he just wasn't worth being outed by Hollywood, blacklisted to make a big deal about it. I don't like to speculate that hard. Just acknowledge the facts and not talk about disrespect so passionately, why completely ignoring the respect of others. Yeah, like the outrage here is just amazing. I mean, it's even heating me up how much emotion they are putting into this about a series that they don't in throwing every disrespectful to the artist. These artists are fucking bottom of the barrel. A lot of them fucking are activists. Okay. You said ignore the fucking political thing. A lot of people think Disney should not hire activists, that big media companies should not hire activists. I think there's a place for activist art, but I don't think it should be at Disney because they're idiots. It should be in art houses. Okay. It should be in special little areas, not made, wrapped, and packed to be as palatable as it is to people. Because, you know, if you believe in these things, these very radical ideas, you're radical and you should accept. Most people aren't. Most people shouldn't even. That's not something any institution would want. But they was completely for this at the end of the day.
Decide to do that, honestly, you should have just swallowed it and aired it anyway, because it is so deeply.
It doesn't matter. The wills of anyone doesn't matter. The disrespect, just the offense of it is too much for this person because these artists, these writers, artists were just disrespected. Again, this is why going too far into the emotions, getting too much of a tunnel vision and not seeing the world for what it is, and only getting like this when it becomes a trendy thing to talk about makes you seem a little disingenuous when you put this much emotion. At least a lot of the people that I deal with, they have fandom. They show that they like the fandom. Some of them are probably faking it, but at least a small majority of them, it's very established that they are fans of these properties and they feel left out. You don't even have that excuse for this unless you're just chilling for the corporate people, but you don't want to have the actual backbone to sort of admit that you're just chilling for this sort of crap. Is it because you believe in this crap or for your own sake? So you get responses like this. And yeah, okay, I'm giving you a response, but I've been lacking on the sort of leftist ideas out there because I'm not seeing as many of them and I'm not seeing them quite as badly as this they is putting them out there, at least not in the media. Still plenty of political pundits. I think, well, most of them are going into hiding after various things, various outrages, and good. Okay. I just wish that would happen on the other side. Shifting of the pendulum. Fucking hell.
Disrespectful to all the work that went into this, that you're just shelving it. Now, this is, of course, part of a larger pattern with Disney in a few ways.
Oh, that was such a fucking dramatic. I think that was a fucking act, okay? Manufactured outrage. I mean, let me check it again.
All the work that went into this, that you're just shelving it. Now, this is, of course, part of a larger pattern with Disney in a few ways.
That's not normal behavior, okay? I would expect a cut, maybe a few more seconds to make that apparent outrage about all this lead into this. Oh, maybe she's still in the middle of calming down, okay? If she goes through all of this shit like this, I'm calling bullshit on this. That was fake outrage. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're just used to going hot to cold that quickly. Some people can do it. It seems a little odd to do that in one sitting. Okay. Just saying.
We've had things like the undermarketing of Strange World, which had a prominent gay relationship. There was the revelations about notes given about Inside Out 2, about the main character of Riley, who is not gay and was not intended to be gay, but there were still concerns that she was being gay coded because basically just because she's a jock and a little bit of a tomboy. Apparently that was enough to get some people's nerves going and therefore.
Yeah, some people are stupid. Some people are careful. Why are you listing this stuff? Again, are you a political activist? Or are you talking about media? You're trying to make it like it's the media that you care about. But I'm seeing a certain theme within this. You're not caring about the quality of the product, even. Yeah, you hyped up how beautiful it was, how emotional it was. Nothing about the quality. When I went over it, I'm like, yeah, this art style, it's a little bit better than the sort of Kal-El style. Some variations. I like the sort of transitioning scenes. You know, a lot of it came off as cringe to me. It's for children, okay? I'd be like, oh, the music choices, some of the dialogue, obviously for a younger audience. I acknowledge that, but I can appreciate the actual art when I went over it. This Shide, I didn't see any appreciation for anything within the art, just the sort of political themes. But they don't want to actually say that because you know what? No one wants to actually admit that they're in this for political motivation. No matter, I'm not even saying that this she-they is necessarily a political person hiding themselves. They could be just doing this for a certain audience, a certain demographic who comes to them for this. Happens on the right. I'm just not seeing it on the left. A lot of them move to off of YouTube into more paid service, which is ironic given a lot of them are communists, or maybe not, crowdfunding and all.
Heads sweating. But then there's also, of course, the Owl House. Now, I don't want to go too far down this road, but
A few moments later.
2 girls. And that was becoming more and more prominent. Now, the official reason, and this was as quoted by Dana Terrace, who is the creator and showrunner for it, the reasons that she says she was given for the show's cancellation did not include that. The reasons that she was given were that it was becoming too serialized for what they wanted, and also was appealing to an audience that skewed older. And if we sort of set aside the gayness for a second, those are not invalid reasons to consider canceling a show, especially on something like the Disney Channel. Because remember, it wasn't for Disney Plus, as is also the case with Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. It was for the Disney Channel. The concerns about serialization, that I think just had to do with how heavily...
And you completely just want this gay shit in children media. And you wonder why people are calling you groomers. I think it's overplayed. The sort of normalization, they're trying to turn our kids trans or the frog's gay. But there is a normalization thing that does sort of soften them up to be later propagandized a lot easier. I will admit to at least that theory having a little bit of legitimacy. And real writers, real artists don't actually need any of this stuff to express the sort of values that the left reports to want to put out there in the world. It just takes creativity. Alien shows, you can have non-gendered people where gender doesn't actually fucking matter, and no one will blink an eye at that. The she-they is going for the sort of artist angle. And that probably plays pretty good considering AI is fucking making the artist jobs much tougher. I stand on that it sucks, but what are you going to do about it? Another revolution. You make laws, you pass them to sort of ban that sort of stuff, put people out of work. The more unethical people who don't care about that stuff will get ahead. And you know what? It'll probably be a lot of people on the left who just won't want to admit it, hide it. Because I think the right is all for it, okay? They're fine with it. Hell, I'm even fine with replacing some voice actors from translation. What about the Funimation jobs? Fuck Funimation, fuck voice actors, okay? Start developing smaller stuff and building it up and leave the fucking corporate shit out there to rot. Stop going for the big wigs, the big money. If you want to be an artist, take chances and don't be such a fucking bitch about it.
It was leaning into it because there's some degree of serialization with a fair amount of stuff on Disney. The new DuckTales had serialized elements, Amphibia did, Gravity Falls did. The thing is, though, Owl House had them much more heavily, especially in its second season. If you tried to just drop in and catch an episode in season 2, you would probably be lost if you hadn't seen the more recent episodes up to that point. I don't mean like you wouldn't know who the characters were. Like you could have seen all of season 1, but you drop in like halfway into season 2, you're going to be lost because so much has changed and shifted due to the serialized storytelling. Now, serialized storytelling is by no means a net negative, but it's not really the direction Disney tends to lean. They tend to lean more in the favor of maybe there's some serialized elements, but Owl House did them harder. And
Okay. They're simping for Disney again. I'm getting whiplash from all this. Okay, they're legitimately talking about realistic business practices. Okay, and I don't know how that plays into this whole Owl House crap. I really don't know how it plays into it. Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead. Maybe I'll catch the end. Maybe I won't. I'm about ready to say fuck this, video done, but I'll give it a second or two. I'll give it a couple more minutes to see if I can tolerate any more of this slop.
Hey, but I think we'd be better served by something that is in a similar vein, but appeals more to the age range we're aiming for, because then, yeah, they'll watch this, but they'll also stick around and watch a bunch of other stuff as well. So it's about how things fit into overall picture. The reason I bring all this up, because like as a one-to-one comparison, what happened to the Owl House is not the same as what happened to this episode of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. But the reason I bring it up is that the reasons that were given are often not invalid, as is probably true of the reason that this episode is officially getting shelved. The reason is not just an excuse, but it does still try to avoid the issue of the transness, gayness, whatever else that is inherent to the show. And I, for one, do believe that that is a factor. But I also think that we're not helping ourselves or the show by acting like that's the only reason these things get canceled or impacted in this way. Now, as I said, to the best of my knowledge, Dana Terrace has not accused.
Oh, it's like having a nuanced perspective isn't something inherent to politically activist-minded people. Yeah, well, maybe you should try to change that, okay? You're just feeding into it with this sort of emotional language. It's going to drown out your more rational explanations when you get them all riled up over outrage, especially towards the fucking artist who got paid for the fucking episode. If you have evidence that they got gypped because it didn't go on air, maybe I would give you something. But for the art, for the sake of art, no, it's for the message. Don't try to hide that, okay? This is just so wish-washy.
Disney of canceling the show because of its gay theming. However, Terrace has been pretty vocal at calling out the studio about other stuff, like when the whole "don't say gay" thing happened. Yeah, she didn't really keep quiet about that. And there's certainly documentation.
Again, the "don't say gay" bill, horribly mislabeled. Of course, all things have to be politicized, okay? All things have to be demonized, okay? Details are always left out. I just think the "don't say gay" bill was badly sort of named by the media, the mainstream media, when it had a really clear difference. Just like the left doesn't like being called groomers, you got to give some to get some. Other side is going to feel that they can be dishonest if you guys. And why are you making me get into the political stuff? As I said, I have to know about it to get into some of this more crazy media talk. I don't want this. I don't want to have to keep up with politics to fucking keep up with the media landscape. But I have to accept the reality that that's the best way to approach this stuff. And I'm hoping I don't push any of my sort of political messages, leanings within this. I just want most of the shit to be good and to keep the more blatant stuff out, mainly for the sake of the media. So people aren't fighting over this so badly. Because it takes two to tango. If we were all leftist utopia or a rightist utopia, probably wouldn't be any disagreements. There wouldn't be any disagreements about the messaging on any of this stuff. But I digress. And this video is gonna be a mess.
Queerness being part of these things at the development stage. But again, we look at something like Moon Girl, it was allowed to develop and be finished. So there's still something a little bit off and a little bit different about this. But the reason I bring all this stuff up is because if I were, for a moment, to think like a corporation, which, as a reminder, is not necessarily immoral, but it is amoral. Corporations have no morality. I'm not saying that the people who make the decisions at the upper brass have no morality. They probably have some of some kind. Yeah, but
again, she wants to eat her cake and make out with it too. Sorry, it's a messy process. And probably the biggest problem with this, especially given the sort of gender dynamics that leftists like to push, it's just ironic that they think in such binary terms. You can see it in action. The wishy-washiness. Fucking hell. Done with this. I'm sure there's more. More cringe, more back and forth crappiness. But I'm done.